All right, and it looks like we have sort of leveled off in terms of the people logging in, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to today's webinar. I'm very excited for you all to be here today. We're going to be talking about advice for finding work you love. Our special guest today is Aaron Levy, and I'll give you a better introduction to him in just a minute. Again, my name is Bree Weiler-Reynolds, and I'm the Senior Career Specialist at FlexJobs, and we're very excited to host this webinar today and give you all some good advice and actionable tips that you can use after today's event is all over. So just a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, this is going to be about a 60-minute webinar. We'll end it with a Q&A session. So we will be talking for maybe 30, 40 minutes, depending on how the discussion goes. I'll be asking a lot of questions to Aaron and getting his advice for you all. And then we will open it up to audience questions. So for the last 15 or 20 minutes, we will toss it out to you all. Everybody who's listening today, feel free to put your questions in the GoToWebinar control panel's questions box. And if you don't see your GoToWebinar control panel, look around on your screen for a little orange arrow. And when you see that little arrow, click on it, and it should magically open the control panel. And you'll be able to see the questions area. So you can put in any questions that you have there. And don't worry if you put in a question and then we wind up answering that question somewhere in the webinar. We kind of monitor everything as we're going, and we'll try to ask as many pertinent and great questions as we can at the end of the presentation. So tomorrow you're going to receive an email with a link to the recording of this webinar, so you can review it, you can replay it as many times as you'd like and get all the information over again. And also a survey, which is just a very quick, I think 3 or 4 question survey that asks you about today's event and gets your ideas for how we can make things better in the future. And you'll also be receiving a follow-up email from Aaron as well, so you'll be able to communicate with him if you choose to. So the topics that we're going to be going over today, I'll introduce you to Aaron, so you'll get to know him and his background. And then there'll be a conversation between Aaron and I. Will be discussing advice for finding work that you love and all of the different ways that we can possibly talk about it. And then, as I said, we're going to open it up to audience Q&A, and then we'll talk about next steps, things to know for when this webinar is all over. All right, so just a little bit about our presenter before we go ahead and get started talking. Aaron Levy is the founder and CEO of Aaron Levy Coaching and Raise the Bar Consulting. He's a certified career coach, and you can find more about him at raisebar.co or Aaron at raisebar.co. And I'm going to actually let him talk a little bit more about his own journey into getting into this line of work and what led him here. That's why my intro is a little bit short, because I think it's always great to hear somebody's story from them. So Aaron, thank you so much for being here today. Oops, let me don't zoom past question 1. Hi, Aaron. Thanks a lot for being here today.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, good. Thank you for being here. So my first question, as I mentioned, is what led you into this path to helping others find the work that they love and to doing this sort of work? How did you get here?
It's a really interesting question. And I think only over the last couple of years, I've been able to parse it together a little more eloquently than maybe I would have at, let's say, 18 or 19, because it really started when I was about that age, and I fell in love with film. I fell in love with documentary film specifically, and only now do I realize why, because when you leave a movie, you have a new perspective on the world, or you have an opportunity to have a new perspective on the world. And that's, I think, what I love most about documentary film production, was this ability to give someone a view, a different perspective, and a different way of thinking about their life or their world or their community around them. And so my career path was to go be a documentary film producer, was to go make and edit and put those together. And that's the path I was on. And then somewhere just about before I graduated from college, I had this amazing opportunity to be the first employee at a health and well-being startup company. And I looked at what I knew about film, which was it takes a whole lot of effort and energy just to produce one film, and it could take years before that even happens and people even see it. Or I could go to work at this health and well-being startup and create that immediately and start impacting people immediately. And so for me, it was fairly clear that I wanted to be impacting and working with people. And in that work, one of the first things we dove into is, why do people, when they know what they should do, when they know what is, for example, they know smoking is bad for them, why do they still smoke? Or even at a higher level, when they're committed to making a change, I'm committed to exercising, why don't they exercise? And where's this gap between knowledge and action and actually commitment and action? There's a big gap there, right? People know that eating healthy and exercising will reduce your chances of dying from cardiovascular disease, yet cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer in America. And so there's this huge gap, and that's what I was fascinated by. And that's really the science of behavior change. It's why people do what they do, how they do what they do, and what are the triggers to help them identify and make the changes that they want to see in their lives. And so I had the amazing opportunity to study that, but also implement and apply it. So we got to take our research and our learnings from different theories and models and say, how does this really work with people? And we had the opportunity to work with thousands of people where I got to coach and educate and really see what works, what doesn't work, what works at the kind of quickest, fastest pace. And that was really, really exciting and engaging. And I quickly found out that I love helping people unlock their potential. And so that's the work I've chosen to live my life around, is how do you unlock your potential? How can I help other people do that? How can I help businesses do that with their employees? And that's what's gotten me here to this day.
I love that. I love that it started with documentary films and that it was sort of your love of movies that kind of led you into this. I particularly love that because I worked at a video store for many years in high school and early in college, and I have that same feeling about a movie. Every time I leave a movie, I feel like I've learned something new about the world and I'm going to change X, Y, and Z. And yep, it's always kind of that. I love that feeling after a movie.
It's so powerful. Can I interrupt? I want to just say one thing.
Yeah.
I don't want people to get the idea that at 18, I found out what I love to do and I've been doing it ever since. That's actually not the full story. So part of that full story is in the middle of that working at that wonderful company, I found myself waking up not excited to go to work. I found myself not as jazzed about the work I was doing, not motivated. I was really confused too, because I was growing within the company. And I realized that in those 5 years that I was working there, it was actually 6 years, I was focused on being the best employee. And somewhere in there, I lost focus on what I wanted. And I wasn't happy, and that needed a change. So I want to share that to let everybody who's listening know that it wasn't all roses and perfect all along the way, even though I was doing something that was externally seeming to be the dream job. I needed to go to work on myself through connecting with coaches, going to workshops, talking to friends, family, and colleagues to make the hard first step and really shine the mirror on myself and explore what I loved, what I wanted, my potential. And in that slowing down, I realized what I wanted to do and why it was important to me. And that's what helped me actually take the shift from being a health and well-being educator, coach, operations person, all of that, to directly helping people and companies find work they love and tap into the power and potential of their people.
And I thank you for that little disclaimer, because I think so many of us get to that point, even in jobs that we started out loving, or career fields that we started out loving, or industries, whatever it might be, that a lot of us get to that point where the job just isn't quite right anymore. Something about us has changed, or something about the position or the company has changed. Something along the way has changed. And it's important to take the time to figure out what that is. And I think that's one of the kind of key pieces that holds people back, is even knowing when you feel that way, when you're waking up in the morning and you're not excited to go to work and you don't love what you're doing anymore, or maybe you never loved it. How do you change that? How do you make it different? And so I'm glad that not glad that you've had that experience, but I am a little glad that you've had that experience, because I think it does help everybody here to know that, you've been there before, where maybe a lot of people on the call today are at right now. And along those lines,
it happens all the time.
Yeah, it really does. And along those lines is kind of our next question. So like you were saying, so many people stay in jobs that they don't like, or that they've outgrown, or for whatever reason, it's just not the right fit anymore. and they're hesitant to even start looking for work that they might enjoy more. So how can people figure out what's holding them back from even beginning the process? What are those first steps that you take to start to evaluate yourself and to ask yourself tough questions and then find the answers to those tough questions?
It's a really great question, because most of us probably don't even know why we don't commit to exploring our options. And what I would say is, if you listen really closely, you may hear the little voices inside your head. And if you think I'm crazy for talking about little voices inside your head, that thought process right now is the little voice inside your head. So just want us to know that it's there, and these are thought patterns that we've had for a long, long time. And oftentimes those voices are there to tell you it's not worth it. I won't get that kind of job anyway. I'm not qualified. And really what this is what some people call in coaching your inner critic. Other people call thought patterns. And really what the job of this little voice is to protect you from change. And yet what I often find with people I work with is that we have this belief that that voice, those thoughts, are who we are. And I know this sounds very kind of high level, but the truth is that these thoughts aren't who you are. It's a habitual thought pattern that arises because of what the future might bring, and the fear of that, fear of change, fear of getting out of your comfort zone. And the truth is that when we get out of our comfort zone, when we stretch ourselves, that's when we're really growing. That's when we're really taking advantage of opportunities. That's where our greatness and our power lies. And, it's knowing that and being able to identify that thought pattern, that inner critic. I can, to hopefully make it easier, I can share with you mine. We all have these thought patterns that we've had for years that hold us back and keep us in place because we want to avoid pain. But avoiding pain also stops us from achieving pleasure and growing and developing and achieving fulfillment, and not just momentary comfort. And so for me, my example, and I found this out by going through the hard work that I mentioned earlier, is I have this need to please others for them to like me, to respect me. And that belief is a belief that I've had for years, and I see it show up everywhere and anywhere, but also I know that it's not true. I know that when I show up at my best, I'm actually coaching people and challenging them, and not just being polite and nice, but giving them opportunities for them to grow. And so I know it's not true, but that is one of the things that held me back and holds people back from even figuring out how to begin the process. So sometimes what I tell people is explore that, look at it. You're not going to get rid of it, but just notice that it's there, and also appreciate that it might not be right, and it might not be supporting you and what you want and fulfillment in your life and finding work you love. Oftentimes it isn't. And so disregard it. Let it go.
Great. Sorry about that. Just getting off of mute. So I think that is one of the biggest things. And I love that you said, the voice in your head is also that person saying, oh, I don't have voices in my head, when you're sitting there thinking about things or thinking about, why is this guy saying this? Or that doesn't make any sense. We all have voices in our head, and one way or another, they're all telling us something. So I think it's important to recognize that it's not crazy to have a little inner monologue. Sometimes I'll joke that my son or my husband they're interrupting the conversation that I'm having with myself in my head. So they think that I'm not really doing anything and I'm available to talk, but really I'm having this kind of in-depth conversation with the voice in my head. So I'm with you. I think it's there, and I talk to mine a lot.
Yeah, so do I.
So let's talk about those first steps. So when you've recognized thought patterns, you've recognized the voice in your head, the negative ideas or fears that are holding you back, all that sort of stuff. What are some of the first steps that someone can take to get clear about what they want to do for work? Whether you have lots of different experiences or you're just starting out in your career, whatever level we have people here at, which I think is pretty much all levels. What are some of those steps that people can take to get clear about what they want to do? Should they focus on, the industry or the job title or the work function, or should it be something different that we focus on? I think those are things that are, you know, the obvious things that a lot of people jump to, but I feel like there might be some other things that people need to focus on and really think about. And yeah, so I'll stop talking there and get your your comments. What are the first steps somebody can take to get clear about what they want to do for work?
Yeah, well, what's really interesting is, as you mentioned, is that so often we jump into the how. And by jumping into the how, I mean, what's the industry? How do I apply? What's the right role for me? What's the right job? How can I use my skill sets from the past to apply it to the future? And we don't often jump into the what. And this is almost every conversation. I have hundreds, even thousands of conversations with individuals about getting really clear on who you are and what it is that you want in life will help you get even clearer on how you can bring that to a job, to a function, to an industry, to a career. And so what I call is the first three steps are values, vision, mission. And I do this with every single person I coach with. I also do this with businesses because it's core to businesses. And in values, vision, mission, values is the first part. And this is what I call you at your core. It's, if I asked you what are 5 words that describe you, you would, without thinking, actually just off the top of your head, spitting them out, those would probably be the best ones, right? For me, I'm honest, courageous, passionate, funny, and loving. That's me. That has nothing to do with anything else that happens, any external stimuli that happen in my life. That's me at my core, and I've kind of always been that way. And so when I ask people, I ask them to think about when they were at their best, what are the traits that show up? Because often those are the traits those are the values of who they are and how they show up. And that's the very first thing I have people do is show up with values. And it's for this idea of living your life, not by accident, like most people do, but really living your life on purpose and being clear with your truth, your core, who you are. And that helps you to be an anchor to look at opportunities and things. You go from there. So that's values. Values is really, what are 5 words that describe who you are as a person at your best? Vision, that's the next step. And that's really the biggest piece. This is the impact you want to have in the world. It's when I ask people, why are you here? And not just here sitting down or here listening to this webinar, but why are you on this earth? It's a bigger question. It's deeper than just your next job, than a promotion. It's your purpose. It's why you get up in the morning. And we all have one, but we're not always directly connected to it. And we feel like it's scary to figure out. But what I tell people to say is go with your gut, and this can change. Values probably don't change so often, but your vision, the impact you want to have on the world, that happens all the time and changes all the time. But you can see it very clearly in people once they identify with it. So mine is unlocking people's potential. I said it in why I do what I do. I said it in my intro, and you'll see it in everything that I do because I'm deeply connected to it, and it's the anchor point for all of my decisions. It's what helps you find work you love because you're getting clear on the contribution you want to bring to the world. And it's about being a tool to live your life purposely and not by accident. It's another way to say it. It's like the stand that you are taking, that you're declaring. And when people get really clear on this, it's almost like an aha moment, and it doesn't take that much to get it. But you get really clear on who you are and what the impact you want to have is, and that actually starts to form the different opportunities you can take. So if I say, I love unlocking people's potential, that's the impact I want to have on the world. I want to help people reach their power. I can do that by being a bank lender. I can do that by being a baseball coach. I can do that in so many ways. But knowing that now, I can be tapped into those roles if I take them on. And then the mission is the next part, which is knowing the impact I want to have on the world, right? When I think about mission, the difference between mission and vision, a vision is where you want to go, where you want to be. So if you want to go to Paris, now how are you going to get there? That's the mission. The mission is really the strategy. It's how do I reach my vision? The questions I ask are, what do I need to do? And also, who do I need to be Right? One of the reasons I use that question is because we start to ask, what limiting beliefs do I need to let go of to be able to reach my vision? And so I get really clear with people. 3 very first steps is, what are your values? What's your vision? What's your mission? And I will send you mine. I've already actually read you mine out loud, but I'll send you mine. I have a visual sheet that I kind of draw it up on with Post-it notes and white paper, and I will send in a follow-up so you have it as a point to look at and see, how does this actually work?
Oh, I think that would be so valuable for people. And as a follow-up question to this, do you think that your values, your vision, and your mission change over the course of your life? So I know on this call, we have a lot of people who are career changers or midlife career professionals, or they have a good number of years of experience and they've just kind of, either they're thinking about this for the second time or they've never even thought about it before. But do you think this sort of thing can change throughout your life? Is it worth revisiting values, vision, mission, over the course of your lifetime to see what's changed, if anything?
Yeah, let me give you an example of me. So, and how I believe it works. And everybody can have their own beliefs, but values don't really change. That's who you are. Those are traits that describe you at your core. Your vision, your mission, oh yeah, that changes. I mean, I don't anticipate my vision changing anytime soon, for example, but that doesn't mean it's not going to change when I have kids. I don't have kids yet. That doesn't mean it's not going to change when another life event happens or I achieve something else that changes what the vision impact I want to have, right? There could be a documentary that I watch that really changes the vision, the impact I want to have on the world. So that does change. And what changes even more often is your mission, because your mission are like your action steps to reach your vision. Those I actually create dashboards and track against. So I have metrics to track against my mission. And because I'm checking that on a daily, weekly basis, I'm updating and go pretty much every quarter and look back at my vision and mission and see, is this still aligned? What parts of my mission need to change? If I did really well completing this action step, then what do I need to do differently? What do I need to adjust? Or what do I need to go forward from here? So really great question, because the truth is those things change all the time, and you shouldn't be expected to have to settle in on those. I mean, for example, mine changed when I changed careers, right? Changed jobs. I wasn't satisfied with what was going on. And so I got really clear on what it is that I love. And that changed things for me.
Awesome. That sounds, I like the idea of, the values don't change typically. The vision and the mission are the things that change. And really the mission, I like the idea of checking in on that on a regular basis and really making sure that you are on the right path, and that if you've developed new limiting beliefs, what are they and how can you get past those? And, just refining your strategy over time to make sure that you're always using those values and living by those values, but maybe to reach a different mission or different vision through a different mission. So cool. I love that. That's a great framework for starting off. And I think it's something that very few of us really sit down and deliberately think about these things. So there's some homework for the audience. The first piece of homework is to sit down and think about your values, your vision, and your mission.
One thing I would say is, and I say this all the time, if we put 1/10 as much time into ourselves that we put into planning, strategizing, doing a project for work, the possibilities would be endless. And that's what this is. This is saying, instead of doing an hour of, project management, take 1 hour to think about this for yourself, and then maybe have a week to marinate and come back to it for 30 minutes. And for me, I write it. I scribble it on notepads and piece of paper, because that's how I absorb and that's how I express my thoughts. But put it down somewhere, make it real for yourself. Post it up on, a whiteboard, or I have it in my binder.
Yep, exactly. Really, put it somewhere that will remind you to think of it. And actually, coming from the work flexibility perspective too, I would say part of this, the mission part in particular, the strategy and how you're reaching your vision, is how do you actually want to do work? How do you see yourself working? Is it in an office? Is it working from home? Is it part-time, full-time, flexible schedule? Kind of just and that's going to change over time too. So as part of thinking about your mission, consider how you actually want to do your work every day, because that's where work flexibility comes into place. And I know for anybody who kind of found us through FlexJobs, you're probably interested in flexible work in some capacity. So that's a big piece of it.
Totally. They go hand in hand.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump to question 4, which is about what should we focus on when we're thinking about, what is work that I would love to do? Should we focus mainly on things that excite us or interest us? Or should we also be thinking about what dissatisfies us, or what we don't like to do, or how we don't like to work? What's your thought on that, on focusing mainly on the things that excite us and interest us, or also taking a look at what doesn't excite us or interest us?
What I would say first is make sure you're focused on your vision, right? Make sure you use that as your anchor point. And aside from that, there's going to be parts of work that you don't like. There's going to be parts of work that are difficult, and you probably don't like them because they're pushing up against your limiting beliefs. They're challenging you to grow and to explore yourself more. And with all of that taken, one very simple thing to do is create a T-chart. If you've worked for even a year, you can write down on the left all the things that you love about your work, the qualities of work, and the things that excite you and satisfy you. On the right side, you can put the things that don't fill you up, the things that you dread, and not just dread because they stretch you and help you grow, but because they actually just suck. And so that's a way to, again, get really clear on, oh, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. How does this fit into what I'm doing next? And if you're looking for what you're doing next out of the space of your values, vision, and mission, this is like a filter for you to look at opportunities.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
That's a great idea. Yeah, absolutely. It did to me. So I think just to kind of reiterate or make sure that it made sense to me. So you're saying kind of focusing on that values, vision, mission, and especially your values and your vision really will get clear about what excites you and interests you. And that also really helps to pinpoint what you don't like and what you'd like to avoid when it comes to work at your core.
Yeah, totally.
Totally
at your core. And then once you've done that, you can do a separate activity with literally build a cheat chart of what you don't like and what you do like. And that can serve as as you're really looking at opportunities, your values, vision, mission is one filter, but this T chart is another filter, because you can look at what does a day look like, a day in the life of me working in this role look like. And that can be kind of your secondary filter, but it's a really valuable one.
Yep, absolutely. All right, great. And we do have some good questions coming in. Everybody in the audience, keep them coming. If you have questions, we'll get to as many of those as we can in the Q&A portion, but these look great so far. So the next thing I wanted to ask you about is how can we actually apply this process that you've been talking about to figuring out our dream job and dream flexible work arrangement? So I was talking about before, a lot of people who are at this webinar have come to FlexJobs because they're interested in flexible work in some capacity. And on top of that, they also just aren't quite sure what type of work they want to do. So they know they want to work flexibly, but what that might look like is a little fuzzy, and what they're actually wanting to do for work is a little fuzzy. So everything, for I think folks in this audience, a lot of things seem like this vague concept that they can't really apply to themselves. So essentially, how can somebody apply your process, your techniques, your philosophy to figuring out their actual dream job or dream jobs, plural. I don't want to limit anybody to, you have to do one thing right now, but, and then also their dream flexible work arrangement. How do you actually get to figuring out what you do want to do for a job?
It's a really great point. And one of the things I love to do in workshops, because you have the dynamics of having other people look at it, is actually, once you've got your values, vision, mission, and once you got your values and vision, that's really the first most important part. Share it with other people. Have conversations with them and ask them, what are industries in which this fits? What are roles in which this fits? What have you seen? Because you don't want to limit yourself in your own little silo and say, okay, now how can I fit myself into molds based on who I am and what I want for this world? But when you share that with other people, one, you're making it more true to yourself, but two, what you're doing is you're opening up their eyes to possibilities for you. One, to actually make connections for you, which is great, but two, to give you ideas of different areas, different realms, so that you can start to get tactical, because all the steps we've talked about before right now aren't as tactical in physically finding a job. Those are tactical to say, okay, hey, someone said, and I say do this with at least 3 people. Sometimes I do it with 3 people in a room, right? You're hanging out with a group of people, or you ask them to come and connect with you and brainstorm with you for 20 minutes, 10 minutes even. And out of that, you're going to get 10, 15 different ideas of roles, of industries, of opportunities. And if you don't have the opportunity to do it with 3 people all together, when you're going out to lunch, when you're grabbing coffee with people, do it then. And gather and pull these in, and then you have a list. You have a very tangible list that you can put into Excel and say, how do I start to reach out to these companies? Or if it's industries, what are the companies that fill that? And we filter it again by, how do I want to be working, and from a flexible work standpoint. And I know FlexJobs does an awesome job of being your filter, right? They are a filter in essence for you to look at flexible work opportunities. And you use that and you say, okay, hey, now I know the industries, the types of companies, or even the company specifically. Let me look at the opportunities that are out there.
Awesome. I think that's such a great way to put into action, because I think one of the things that holds a lot of people back is that they're just not sure what's out there. So putting it through, a few other people, or even more other people. I mean, really, just take as many trusted opinions as you can. But really, putting it through other people will bring up so many, work ideas that you might not have even thought of. I was actually just talking to somebody this morning who was in the career advising profession. He was a college career advisor for a number of years, and he's looking to use those same skills. He likes doing that work, but he's looking to do it in a different way, not necessarily in a college setting or with students, but doing that in some other capacity. And so we were just kind of brainstorming what that might look like. And it really does take talking to other people to get ideas that you might not even know existed out there. And I would say, actually, somebody followed up here with a comment that they're saying, this is where I'm at now. I want a flexible job, but what flexible job? They're just not sure what is out there, what is aligned with, my values, my vision, my mission. And so at this point, I think it takes asking a lot of people and a lot of research also. And I know one of the things we try to do on FlexJobs, for anybody who's interested, is on our blog and also in the job listings, we try to highlight surprising flexible jobs, because I think that's one of those things that triggers in people's brains, like, oh, I didn't know that job could be done flexibly. I think I would like that kind of work, but I never even thought about it being flexible. And so they had kind of crossed it off their list before they even realized what the potential was there. So I think, just a lot of research and asking people is a great idea. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see. We are making good time here. A couple more questions, and then we will open it up to audience questions. So Erin, how can we move past our fears? This is actually one of the questions that I saw coming up that I was going to ask later if we didn't quite get to it here. But, once you've identified your negative thought patterns or your limiting beliefs, that basically that voice in your head, all the things that it's telling you that you can't do this or you shouldn't do that, how do you move past those fears, or at least proceed even in the midst of those fears and obstacles that you think are in your way, to get started and gain momentum?
So I was talking about this yesterday with a group, and it's a story that I find very powerful. It's Viktor Frankl's story. And if you are familiar with him, I'm sorry for repeating it. If you're not, he was a brilliant man, and his book's called Man's Search for Meaning. And this really highlights the point for me on kind of overcoming fears. He was a prominent psychiatrist, I believe, or psychologist pre-World War II in Germany. And he was really well known around the world, and his work was regarded. And as Germany was, the Nazi regime was taking over, he got invited to come and live in America. And because he couldn't get visas for his whole family, just his immediate family, he didn't want to leave his parents. And so that choice to stay ended up harming him more than he could ever imagine. which ended up being his parents were taken to a concentration camp and killed. He lost his job. He lost his status. He wasn't able to do his work anymore. He was separated from his family. They were sent to concentration camps and eventually perished. And he was sent to a concentration camp as well. And he was actually holding on to this last bit of dignity, his memoir that he was writing, and had it kind of crumpled in his pants. And one day the guards found that and they took that away from him. And as a psychiatrist and psychologist, he started looking at the human condition. And he looked around him at why people are living and why people are dying. And he realized that outside of all the external factors, he noticed that when people gave up, when they didn't have that vision, that purpose, that connection to it, they didn't have any reason to live and they passed. And what he had told himself was, the one thing that they can't take away from me in here is my mind. The one thing they can't take away from me in here is what I want for this world and how I want to be in my thoughts. And I share this because if someone in that situation, and he ended up making it through the war, and you can look him up online and read his book. It's really, really extremely powerful. I recommend it to everybody. And the first half is all you need to read, and it's really short and great. But what I take from that is, if in what is seemingly one of the worst life situations you can imagine, what he said is, I'm taking 100% responsibility for my life and for my action, regardless of all the other external stimuli. Right? There's this beautiful quote where it says, life is 90% about what happens to you and 10%, or 90% about what happens to you and 10% about how you react to it. It's the other way around, sorry. Life is 10% about what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. And I really believe in that. I know that could rub a lot of us the wrong way because there are external circumstances that throw us into dark and very tough places, but there's also a lot of research that shows that people 3, 6, 9 months after a major tragedy are back to their normal states of happiness and well-being, from a mental standpoint, not from a physical standpoint, obviously. And so what this is really about is taking 100% responsibility for your life and for your actions. And when you're able to do that, when you're able to say, this is what I want, this is what I stand for, and this is what I care about achieving, from there, it's simple. And it's simple in doing that doesn't mean it's easy. It's about doing the work. It's about becoming aware of when those limiting beliefs and fears show up, and having the deliberate practice to notice and say, okay, that's there, and I'm not gonna follow it. I'm not gonna let that continue my thoughts. I'm not gonna let myself suffer for the next day and call it a bad day because I let this fear control what I want to do. It's not supporting what I really want to do in my life. And so the steps in deliberate practice are becoming aware and then taking action to do something different, to change your state. Sometimes I have a client, Rob, who I said, do 10 push-ups, do 5 jumps, go run sprints. He's a former athlete, so that really connects with him. And he does that. It changes his state immediately. And he's able to get out of that fear base and get back into what he really cares about, which is his values, his vision, his mission. Personally, I have a coach that holds me accountable. I have a dashboard to measure my actions that I take towards driving past my limiting beliefs. So I set things up in my life that I don't have to say, oh, that's my motivation, or, oh, I can't believe my limiting belief controls me. I actually say, oh, what are the structures to be checking in on it? And when I notice that I'm falling into a limiting belief, I don't get mad at myself. I actually get happy, because that's a point of awareness. That's a point of knowing, oh, I'm aware that this is happening. Okay, now I can do something different. And every time you notice, even if it's 5 times in a minute, you're noticing an opportunity.
I think that's so true. I love what you said about the steps for deliberate practice, or steps in deliberate practice, where you become aware and then you take action. And like you said, you might 5 times in a minute become aware that you're telling yourself something, oh, that's going to be too hard. I don't have the skills for that. All of those kind of thoughts. But the awareness of that is such an important thing. And it really does almost make you happy to think, oh, I caught myself doing it and I'm going to take action even though I'm having that thought. And whether it's, doing 5 jumping jacks to get you away from that thought and then taking action, or you have maybe a personal mantra that you recite in your head, or whatever, out loud, singing a song, whatever it is to kind of jumpstart you and get you out of that and moving towards action. I love all those ideas. And we're getting a lot of people, commenting here. I like that. It's very true. Just saying that this is kind of the info that it's resonating with them, basically.
Well, great. And what I want to say as well is, because I'm able to talk about this clearly does not mean I have this perfected by any means. This is a constant practice and struggle for me. And I'm practicing deliberately. So I'm much better at it than I was 3 years ago, much better than I was 2 years ago, even last year, because I'm able to find awareness quicker and easier and then adjust quicker and easier. But it's taken a lot of practice and being very conscious of it and having other people hold me accountable. And as I said, setting my dashboard to check in on it, sometimes on a daily basis or an hourly basis. It's really just setting up those structures that's helped me get better at it. And it still works, right? You're not going to flip a switch and be like, I'm great at this right away. Like anything in life, it all takes work and practice and just doing the work. And sometimes knowing that it just takes actually taking the next step forward. And that's what, some people call courage. And what I believe courage is actually being willing to take the next hard step in front of you. And sometimes it's just that next step. That next step is awareness, or saying, once you're aware, I'm not going to sit in this. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to change my mindset. And so that's a part of the work that I'm still continuing to do on a daily basis. Bree, are you still there?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Gotta love the mute button. It keeps all the noises out, but then when you don't turn it off, it keeps you out. No, I was going to say, I think that all makes perfect sense. And the steps that you're talking about having people take can really be very small steps to first get started. Because I think once you take really small steps, that's how you build that momentum to take the bigger steps eventually. So it might be, you go to FlexJobs.com and you decide today's action is going to be just reading 3 job descriptions and learning about 3 jobs that I hadn't heard of before or that I was unaware of, and just learning what those jobs are. And that's it. That's my action for today, especially when you're stuck and you're not sure what's out there. Just little things like that. Or I'm going to ask, 3 of my closest friends for their feedback on what they think I should do based on what they know about me and my personality and my values. So I think when thinking about what steps people need to take, sometimes they're tiny, itty bitty little steps. And speaking of steps, I would come to our last question before we open it up to the audience. So what are a handful of next steps? I swear I didn't plan us to be talking about steps and then steps, but what are a handful of next steps that people can and should do after we end this webinar? What's, some homework or action steps that people can take to figure out what their dream job is, and just give us some homework to do. What can we do?
Yeah, so, and I hope that this sounds like most of the conversation we've had already, because you should already have a kind of clear idea of what some of the steps are. And the first step is get clear on your values, vision, mission. Get clear on that. As I said, I'll send you a document so you can see what mine looks like and use it as an example, but get clear for yourself. Spend the time to do that. That's the very first step. Take that step. And, sometimes you might think, well, I could use somebody else to help me in that. I'm happy to, I think we'll send, or Bree will share in a minute, happy to have a coaching session and work through that with people, and happy to recommend other coaches if I know any in your area that are really wonderful as well. So that's what I would say is get clear on that. Find a support tool if you need help getting clear on that. But keep it simple, not a handful, just one first step. Get clear on your values, vision, and mission.
Awesome. I like that. And so that might take a long time for some people, and it might take a very short time for other people. So, if you're struggling with it and you're working on it for a while, that's fine. And if it takes you 5 minutes and you go, oh my God, this is exactly what I feel about myself, and it's right here in front of me now, that's great too. Okay, so let's open it up for questions because we do have a lot coming in. Actually, a number of people, when you were talking about your dashboard and tracking yourself in terms of your mission, what do you use to do that? Some people are asking if it's an app or a document of some kind. Like, what does your tracking system actually look like?
So it's funny because I started doing a tracking system with one of my good friends where we would use a Google spreadsheet and we would track our workouts on there. And my workouts are part of what helps me be in the right mindset and be in the place I need to be. And I would also track other things. Like for a while, I tracked my meditation on there because I needed a place to write down if I meditated or not. Now I do it without needing to track, but for about a year I needed to. So I use something as simple as a Google spreadsheet. And what's funny is that my friend who started doing this with me actually created an app based on that, partially on that concept. It's called Daily Spot. You can find it on the App Store or go to dailyspot.co. And it has meals, quick tips for meditation and exercise and stretching, and kind of has it all in a calendar there for you to keep too. So you can kind of check in, do your workout or do your meditation or whatever it is and check in and leave it there, which I find to be really valuable as well. And it's fun for me because I see how he's molded what we use to really support ourselves into supporting others. And then the third way is, you know, I keep my I have my business dashboard, and that's, you know, the other components that are maybe not as personal, but more clear from a business standpoint of how many meetings did I have, or how many presentations did I give, or how many people and I'm able to track that on a weekly basis and check in. Or am I working towards my, you know, important metrics? And that's something most businesses do as well, but I use as my dashboard. So if you're looking for, let's say, your right role, then your dashboard could be how many people did I reach out to? How many events did I go to? How many webinars did I sign up for to learn from? And those are really great ways to start to track your actions, because if you're not tracking your actions, then they're just great ideas, but they're not anything set in stone. And so once you get these big ideas like values, vision, mission, start to put together the specific measurable action steps and then measure against them. Was that helpful?
I think so, absolutely. I think some people were wondering, you know, if it's some kind of specialized program, but it really sounds like it's something you developed for yourself on a simple spreadsheet. So anybody here could do the same thing. And I like the idea of being able to share it with friends too, because it's kind of that accountability, you know, built-in coach side of it, where you have this person who's going to be, you know, tracking you as you track yourself, and maybe you can help them at the same time.
Exactly.
All right. So another person is asking about the biggest problem is the type of work I'm interested in. This is Amber. Biggest problem is the type of work I'm interested in doesn't pay as much as my current job, so it doesn't seem logical to change. What are your thoughts on maybe getting past beliefs, or like focus on what's logical, and helping people who are really interested in one line of work, but for some reason it doesn't seem logical to enter that line of work?
Yeah, there's a couple things I'd say here. And obviously I don't know, you know, who's asking this question, what your financial situation is, and what the demands are on your life for your kids or your family or a sick one or whatever that demands a certain financial amount of money to bring in. So it can be hard, and let's be completely honest with that. It can be hard, and that's usually because your vision is maybe to help people or to take care of people, and the people that are most important you to take care of require you to do a mission that might not be as exciting, right? Your vision might be for your family as opposed to for the world in general, and that might require you to take a job that requires more money. If that's not the case, what I tell people is you can make a bunch of money doing anything. You know, you just, like, if we look at the examples of what people make, that 1-800 got junk. That guy picked up junk in Toronto and made it a multi-million or billion-dollar business just from picking up other people's junk in their house for $20 a pop. He was actually losing money, just had a pickup truck and was doing it. You can make money. The point is you can make money doing virtually anything, but what is the key determinant is when you're really passionate about it, when you're really connected to it, when you are really connected to who you are and your purpose, you show up to any line of work better. And when you do that, you're setting yourself up to be better and more successful. So you're giving yourself a better opportunity to make money when you follow your vision.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think that's true. So sort of that clarity of just getting clear on that vision, mission, values, and going from there. Okay, so another question that we have here is, what sorts of tools or exercises, I know you talked, it was like values, vision, mission, and asking other people for their ideas for you, but are there any other tools or, kind of, what's the word? Tools to help people unlock or help you unlock potential for your clients? So what other kinds of tools or exercises do you have people go through? If you can talk about maybe a couple of those.
Yeah, there's a great tool that I love, which is getting really clear on your peak state. And what I mean by peak state is it's almost like when we talked about your values, or how you show up at your best. And it's also like it's when you get that adrenaline rush, when you're in the middle of flow doing work or sports or what some people call runner's high. For me, I'm a triathlete. And so it is after I swam, I biked, it's the last mile of the run in the triathlon where I'm like, okay, come on, let's go. And I get this adrenaline rush where I'm just like, this is the finish line. And my whole adrenaline kicks through my whole body and I get really amped up and really in this peak high energy state. And so what I have people do is find that state that they have in their life, find what it feels like in your body. For one of my clients, she feels her temples, the energy rise up in her temples. For me, I feel it like right in my chest and around my heart, like it's beating extra hard. And so understand what that feels like and even use your body to gesture that motion to kind of bring it up for you. So my wife, if she ever listens to this recording, will laugh because when I'm in triathlons and I'm in the last mile, she's so uncomfortable because I hit myself in the chest and I scream and then I start sprinting. And what that is a way for me to activate into that state, that high energy state. And so when I do that, that's kind of my signal. Now I can do that walking into this meeting before the presentation. Actually, before I called on, I didn't hit myself in the chest because I've gotten so used to being able to get in, what I call tap into that state. I was able to tap in just mentally, just saying, all right, let's go. And I had the visual of me hitting myself in the chest, but I didn't do it. And so the more you do it, the more you're able to tap in at a regular basis. And that's what I tell people to do is practice that. Literally, if you practice hundreds of times a day, it becomes part of how you live and part of how you do. And all good things happen at high energy. And so you're able to put yourself in this high energy state without having to do 25 push-ups or sprint or hit yourself in the chest or rub your temples or stand up and put your arms over your head. Whatever it is that your bodily motion is, that's what I tell people to do. Find that, get that, activate that. And in coaching sessions, we sometimes do it 20 times in 10 minutes. And then their homework is to go do it as often and frequently as possible to make it a new habit. And the way our brain works is every time we create this new habit, we make it stronger. We create the neural connections that happen. We make it stronger every time we continue to do it. And so the more you do it, the stronger that connection is, the easier it is for your brain to find that pathway to continue to do it.
I love that. Yeah, because so much of this it does, yeah. And so much of this is about forming habits, whether it's, getting past those thought patterns in your head. It's a habit to tell yourself, nope, that's a negative thought. There's, no basis in reality for that. I am moving past that thought. It's sort of, habits for all these different stages and steps. And so actually one question that we're having come in a bunch from a lot of folks who are, I will say, experienced or seasoned professionals. I love how many different ways everybody's describing where they are, but some folks say they're over 50, some folks say they're near retirement, but anyway, people who have long careers and they've reached this point where they want to find work that they're passionate about, that they really enjoy, work that they love, but they're also balancing that with the reality that they need to save for retirement and that making a career change might mean taking a lower salary or not making as much money. And that's one of the big fears that they have. And a number of people have commented on this, that they're kind of ready for this, but they also have, these real moments in their life coming up that will require income. And they're looking to kind of find work that they love, change the way they work, but also facing these realities that they're kind of quote unquote up against. What are some of your tips for people in that situation?
That's a really good point, and I so appreciate. I mean, I can't be in that situation because I'm not there in my life, but I have worked with a lot of people, and it's a very real one. But the truth is when you are tapped into your passion, to work that you love, retirement isn't really a thing for people then, because what are you retiring from? Why would you retire from doing something you absolutely love? Now, you might cut back time as you get older. You might do it in a way that's pro bono work, but it really changes your perspective. If you're willing to fully dive into this concept of living into my vision, it changes your perspective on what's possible, on the world around you. And oftentimes we think what's possible based on our past experiences, based on other past experiences, based on the world we think we know. But the truth is what's possible for our future is only defined by the action you're taking right now, and right now, and right now. And so when we allow ourselves to really understand that and live into that, the possibilities are very, very powerful and in some ways endless. So what I would say to those people is really explore what it would look like to live your vision. And when you do that, you might find things to be way different than you had anticipated, because it's not necessarily based on the way you've been living up until now.
Well, that hit the mark, at least for one person. We have a note from Carolyn here, who just came in and said, such a key point for those of us over 50, Erin. Don't retire, inspire. You made my day. Thanks. So there you go. Well, great. I know we've reached the top of the hour. Yes, yeah. I think that's a good place to end. So we have reached the top of the hour. I don't want to keep people past the time. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. But Erin, thank you so much. I think you hit a lot of really key points in your answers and your experience. And thank you for sharing your knowledge with us, and also your energy too. I think it's always inspiring to talk to somebody who you sound like it comes through in your voice that you clearly love doing this sort of thing and talking to people in this way. So thank you. I think you've inspired a lot of people, and myself included.
Well, thank you for having me, Bree, and thank you everybody for joining me during your lunch hour, and have an awesome day.
Yeah, and for everybody here, I've got up on the slides where you can find Erin if you want to get in touch with him, and to find more information about coaching sessions and all of that sort of stuff. That's right up there. Be sure to mention FlexJobs if you do reach out to Erin, and he'll also be sending you a follow-up email just in case you want to get in touch that way. And then, of course, you can also go to flexjobs.com for more information about finding flexible work that you love. And I will say there are just a couple next steps. So there will be just a quick survey after the webinar if you're interested in taking that and telling us how this went and what you'd like to see in the future. And then tomorrow you'll receive a follow-up email that includes a recording of this webinar, so you can review any of the points that were made here. And it will also include a handout. You can also download that handout from the GoToWebinar control panel right now. Sorry about that. I failed to mention that at the beginning. But it's just a brief overview of the information presented here today and information about Erin. So you can kind of keep that in your notes, and that you can get on the GoToWebinar control panel right now, or you can download it in the email you receive tomorrow. And then we also have some upcoming webinars being hosted by FlexJobs. To find out about all of those, you can go to our blog and then go under FlexJobs resources and job search webinars and videos. On June 20th, we'll be having a webinar with 3 employers who are currently hiring for flexible jobs. And I expect to get a blog post up about that in the next couple days. So be sure to check back there to register for that webinar, to actually get in contact with some employers who are actively hiring. But again, thank you, Erin, for being here. Thank you to everybody who was here today to listen in and ask great questions. I hope you walk away with some action steps towards finding work that you love, and best of luck in your future career endeavors. Thanks, everyone, and have a great rest of the day.